On March 15, 2010, Adam Reeves, a 34-year-old photographer from Michigan, was exploring abandoned buildings in the small town of Milan, Indiana. During his visit to a dilapidated two-story house on the outskirts of town, he made a discovery that would later become crucial evidence in one of America's most notorious criminal cases. The house, abandoned since 2003, had previously belonged to the Peterson family before foreclosure. While photographing the deteriorating interior, Reeves noticed unusual wear patterns on the floorboards in the master bedroom. Upon closer inspection, he found a loose board and discovered a metal box measuring, carefully concealed in the crawlspace. Inside the box, investigators from the Ripley County Sheriff's Department, led by Detective Sarah Martinez, found disturbing contents: 7 U.S. passports, 15 driver's licenses from various states, social security cards, credit cards, and personal photographs. The documents belonged to different individuals who had been reported missing between 1998 and 2008. The recovered items included identification documents belonging to James Cooper, age 42, who vanished from Columbus, Ohio in October 1998, Michael Dawson, 38, last seen in Memphis, and many others. The FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program was brought in to assist with the investigation. Special Agent Marcus Thompson led the federal investigation, working alongside Detective Martinez. Despite extensive forensic analysis, including fingerprint testing and DNA sampling, investigators were unable to establish sufficient evidence linking the documents to any particular suspect. The house's ownership history provided no significant leads. Property records showed that between 1995 and 2003, the house had been owned by Richard and Mary Peterson, an elderly couple who had lost the property to foreclosure. The Petersons had passed away in 2005 and 2007 respectively, and interviews with their surviving relatives revealed no connection to the missing persons. A thorough examination of the recovered documents revealed that all 7 missing men shared similar physical characteristics. They were all Caucasian males in their late 30s to mid-40s, medium build, brown hair, and heights between 5 feet 10 inches and 6 feet 1 inch. However, investigators could not establish any personal or professional connections between the victims during their initial investigation. The peculiar aspect of these cases was that each man had seemingly vanished without a trace. Their bank accounts remained untouched, and their vehicles were found parked at their respective residences or workplaces. In several cases, family members had received text messages or emails supposedly from the missing persons weeks after their disappearances, causing initial confusion among local law enforcement agencies. After 6 months of intensive investigation, including interviews with over 200 potential witnesses and extensive forensic analysis, the case went cold due to lack of evidence. The box and its contents were logged into evidence at the FBI field office in Indianapolis. The disappearances remained unsolved, joining hundreds of other missing persons cases across the United States. The box would remain in evidence storage for 15 years, before its true significance would be revealed in a groundbreaking investigation that would shock the nation and become one of the most significant criminal cases in modern American history. From late 1997 to 2010, a disturbing pattern of disappearances emerged across the United States. Law enforcement agencies documented over 30 cases of missing persons who shared striking similarities in their life circumstances. The victims were predominantly single individuals, leading modest lives, with stable employment and no significant financial troubles or known enemies. One of the earliest cases involved Rachel Martinez, a 35-year-old librarian from Portland, Oregon, who vanished in November 1997. Her apartment was found in perfect order, with no signs of forced entry or struggle. 3 weeks after her disappearance, her sister received a handwritten letter postmarked from Seattle, allegedly from Rachel, claiming she needed time away to find herself. The handwriting analysis was inconclusive, and Martinez was never found. Similar cases followed. In March 1998, David Foster, a 41-year-old accountant from Sacramento, disappeared after leaving work. His car was found in the office parking lot, and his apartment showed no signs of disturbance. 2 months later, his brother received several text messages from Foster's phone, suggesting he had moved to Mexico to start a new life. Phone records showed the messages were sent from various locations across Texas. Throughout these investigations, a name repeatedly surfaced: Gregory Larson. He appeared as a peripheral figure in multiple cases, always in different roles. In Portland, he had worked as a maintenance worker in Martinez's apartment building for 3 months before her disappearance. In Sacramento, he had been Foster's temporary co-worker through a staffing agency. Larson's presence in these cases was subtle but persistent. In 2001, he was briefly questioned about the disappearance of Linda Thompson, a 38-year-old nurse from Denver, Colorado. He had been her neighbor for 2 months before she vanished. Police noted his cooperative demeanor and seemingly transparent responses, but found no evidence linking him to Thompson's disappearance. Local investigators began noticing Larson's pattern of movement. He never stayed in one place for more than 4 months, working temporary jobs through various agencies. His employment history showed positions as a maintenance worker, office clerk, warehouse worker, and security guard across 12 different states. However, his transient lifestyle was not unusual enough to warrant deeper investigation, and he maintained a clean criminal record. Between 2003 and 2008, 6 more individuals disappeared under similar circumstances in cities where Larson had been documented to have lived or worked. Each case involved single adults between 35 and 45 years old, living alone, with stable jobs, and no apparent personal problems. In each instance, the missing person's bank accounts remained untouched, and their homes were found undisturbed. The investigation methods were consistently hampered by the same factors. First, the victim's orderly disappearances left few forensic clues. Second, the delayed missing persons reports, often due to the victim's solitary lifestyles, gave potential perpetrators ample time to cover their tracks. Third, the communications received by family members after the disappearances created confusion about whether these were actual missing persons cases or voluntary departures. Law enforcement agencies across different jurisdictions struggled to connect these cases. The geographical spread of the disappearances, combined with variations in local police procedures and the lack of obvious signs of foul play, made it difficult to establish a pattern. Gregory Larson's name appeared in police reports as a person of interest multiple times, but investigators could never gather enough evidence to justify a deeper investigation. His ability to provide alibis, combined with his unremarkable demeanor and lack of criminal history, allowed him to continue moving freely across state lines, leaving a trail of mysterious disappearances in his wake. Gregory Larson's story began in Duluth, Minnesota, where he was born in 1972. His early life was marked by instability and trauma. His mother, Margaret Larson, suffered from severe schizophrenia, leading to frequent hospitalizations. His father, John Larson, abandoned the family when Gregory was 10 years old, leaving him to navigate his mother's illness alone. School records from Duluth Central High School revealed early signs of Larson's future behavior. Teachers noted his exceptional intelligence alongside concerning behavioral patterns. At age 15, he was caught attempting to create fake student IDs, showing an early aptitude for document forgery. Despite mandatory counseling, his fascination with identity manipulation continued. By his junior year, Larson had developed sophisticated methods of identity theft. A former classmate later testified that Larson had shown him a collection of stolen mail and social security cards, explaining his techniques for gathering personal information. This early criminal behavior coincided with his mother's deteriorating condition and subsequent permanent institutionalization. In 1990, at age 18, Larson left Duluth. The following decade would see him perfect his methods of assuming others' identities. His victim selection process revealed a calculated methodology. He targeted individuals who shared his physical characteristics: brown hair, medium build, height around 5 feet 11 inches, and ages between 35 and 45. This physical similarity allowed him to more easily assume their identities. Investigators later discovered Larson's meticulous preparation process. Before targeting a victim, he would spend weeks observing their daily routines, social connections, and behavioral patterns. He often gained employment at their workplace or rented apartments in their building, allowing him to study their mannerisms and gather personal information. This thorough research enabled him to convincingly impersonate his victims after their disappearance. The disposal of his victims showed equally careful planning. While the majority of bodies were never recovered, forensic evidence from 2 discovered sites in 2021 revealed his method. He would typically stage accidents in remote locations, using his knowledge of decomposition to ensure minimal chance of discovery. The bodies were found in areas with high acidic soil content, accelerating decomposition and complicating forensic analysis. After each murder, Larson implemented a sophisticated system of identity assumption. He would maintain his victims' bank accounts, making regular transactions to avoid suspicion. He mastered their signatures, writing styles, and communication patterns. In several cases, he maintained correspondence with victims' family members for months, effectively delaying missing persons investigations. His process of identity transition was remarkably thorough. For instance, when assuming the identity of Michael Dawson in 2001, Larson studied Dawson's medical history, learned about his childhood in Memphis, and even researched his allergies. This attention to detail allowed him to maintain Dawson's identity for 8 months, even attending a family funeral without raising suspicion. Over 15 years, Larson successfully assumed more than 20 different identities. Each new identity provided him with fresh opportunities for employment and residence. He worked various jobs across the country, from office administration to maintenance work, always choosing positions that offered minimal scrutiny and maximum mobility. Law enforcement later discovered detailed journals documenting his experiences living as different people. These writings revealed a disturbing psychology. Larson appeared to view his murders not as endings, but as transfers of identity. He wrote extensively about continuing his victims' lives, suggesting he saw himself as some sort of identity curator, rather than a killer. The true extent of Larson's activities during this period would only be fully understood after his arrest in 2021. His ability to seamlessly transition between identities, combined with his methodical approach to murder and disposal, created a web of disappearances that spanned the entire country. His crimes represented a new category of serial killer, one who didn't just take lives, but meticulously assumed and lived them. In January 2021, at a Chicago auto repair shop, Gregory Larson was working under the stolen identity of Mark Wilson, a missing person from Milwaukee. After 3 months of employment, Timothy Brooks, a former co-worker from a Portland warehouse circa 1997, recognized him. Despite Larson's different name and appearance, Brooks remembered him due to their lengthy conversations about identity theft, which he had previously dismissed as theoretical interest. Brooks, troubled by the encounter and Larson's different identity, contacted the Chicago Police Department. Detective Maria Rodriguez and her partner, Detective James Harris, began surveillance of Mark Wilson. Initial background checks revealed discrepancies in his documentation, prompting a deeper investigation into his identity. On February 12, 2021, police executed a search warrant at Larson's North Chicago apartment. The search revealed a carefully organized criminal archive. In a hidden compartment behind his bedroom closet, investigators discovered hundreds of documents belonging to missing persons. Passports, driver's licenses, social security cards, birth certificates, and personal photographs. The documents were meticulously arranged by date, with detailed notes about each person's life. The investigation team, now including FBI Special Agents Robert Turner and Lisa Morrison, uncovered Larson's systematic approach to identity theft. Each victim's documentation was accompanied by notebooks containing personal information, family members' names, childhood memories, medical histories, and daily routines. These details had enabled Larson to convincingly assume his victims' identities. The discovery linked directly to the 2010 Indiana evidence box, confirming investigators' suspicions about a serial identity thief. Forensic analysis of the documents revealed fingerprints matching multiple unsolved missing persons cases. DNA evidence recovered from personal effects provided the first physical links between Larson and several victims. During the apartment search, investigators also found sophisticated document forgery equipment. Larson had created a small workshop for altering official documents, complete with specialized printing equipment and materials for creating convincing forgeries. The technology matched methods used in numerous identity theft cases across multiple states. Digital forensics revealed Larson's extensive online presence under various identities. He maintained email accounts and social media profiles for multiple victims, using them to communicate with family members and employers. The technical analysis showed his methodical approach to maintaining these digital personas, including regular activity patterns to avoid suspicion. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered Larson's financial web. He had maintained bank accounts under various identities, carefully managing transactions to appear normal. His record-keeping was meticulous, including spreadsheets tracking every account and transaction. This financial evidence provided a timeline of his movements and activities under different identities. The investigation also uncovered two crucial pieces of physical evidence. First, a storage unit rented under a victim's name contained personal belongings from multiple missing persons, including items reported in police records from the 1990s. Second, investigators found GPS devices and detailed maps marking remote locations across the country, several of which later proved to be body disposal sites. By March 2021, the task force had compiled enough evidence to charge Larson with multiple counts of murder, identity theft, and fraud. The case had evolved from a simple identity theft investigation into one of the most complex serial killer investigations in FBI history. The evidence suggested that Larson's crimes were more extensive than initially suspected, with potential victims in over 15 states. After Larson's arrest in March 2021, a specialized investigative team led by FBI Special Agent Sandra Miller began the painstaking process of reconstructing his decades of crimes. The investigation headquarters was established in Chicago, where teams of analysts worked to process the enormous volume of evidence collected from Larson's apartment and storage facilities. Forensic analysis of Larson's computers unveiled a sophisticated system of identity management. He maintained detailed spreadsheets tracking the activation and retirement dates of each stolen identity, along with associated bank accounts and credit cards. The data showed he never used a single identity for more than 8 months, systematically rotating through his victims' personas to avoid detection. The most chilling discovery was Larson's collection of journals. Written in different handwritings matching his victims, these journals contained intimate details of their lives. He wrote entries as if he were each victim, describing their memories, relationships, and personal thoughts. Behavioral analysts noted that these writings suggested a profound psychological disconnection, as Larson seemed to genuinely believe he was preserving his victims' lives by living as them. The investigation faced significant challenges in proving the murders. Despite Larson's extensive documentation, the bodies of most victims remained undiscovered. However, investigators found vital evidence in his detailed notes about disposal locations. Using advanced geological surveying techniques and cadaver dogs, search teams identified 5 burial sites across remote areas in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Financial investigators traced Larson's complex web of fraudulent activities. He had used his victims' identities to obtain loans, credit cards, and rental agreements. The total financial impact exceeded $2.3 million, spread across multiple states and financial institutions. His careful management of these accounts, making minimum payments and maintaining regular transaction patterns, had prevented detection by fraud monitoring systems. DNA evidence recovered from the discovered burial sites matched profiles from personal items belonging to 7 victims. Forensic anthropologists determined that the bodies had been carefully placed in locations chosen for their soil composition, which accelerated decomposition. This demonstrated Larson's advanced understanding of forensic science and his efforts to prevent body recovery. The investigation also uncovered Larson's extensive research into law enforcement procedures. His personal library contained books and digital materials about police investigation techniques, forensic science, and identity theft prevention. This knowledge had enabled him to stay ahead of investigators for years, avoiding common mistakes that might have led to his capture. By September 2021, investigators had confirmed 23 murders through various forms of evidence, including DNA matches, financial records, and Larson's own documentation. However, behavioral analysts believed the actual number of victims could exceed 35, based on patterns observed in his movements and financial activities. The most disturbing aspect of the investigation was the discovery of Larson's victim transition protocol. His notes detailed how he would spend weeks studying each victim's mannerisms, speech patterns, and personal histories. He would practice their signatures hundreds of times and memorize intimate details of their lives to maintain convincing impersonations, even during extended interactions with the victim's family members. The investigation also revealed the psychological impact on victims' families, who had received communications from Larson impersonating their loved ones. The trial of Gregory Larson began on January 15, 2022, at the United States District Court in Chicago. Federal prosecutor Alexandra Morrison led the case against Larson, who was represented by public defenders Michael Roberts and Sarah Thompson. The trial immediately captured national attention, with media outlets describing it as one of the most significant serial killer cases in American history. During opening statements, prosecutors presented Larson's crimes as a methodical campaign of murder and identity theft spanning nearly 3 decades. The prosecution team assembled evidence from 23 confirmed murders, though investigators suspected his total victim count exceeded 35. The court heard testimony from over 100 witnesses, including law enforcement officers, forensic experts, and families of victims. Initially, Larson maintained his innocence through an elaborate defense strategy. He claimed the discovered documents were part of a research project about identity theft prevention. His attorneys attempted to portray him as an eccentric collector who had acquired the documents through legal means. However, this defense crumbled as forensic evidence mounted. Key testimony came from Dr. Benjamin Harris, a forensic psychiatrist who had conducted over 30 hours of interviews with Larson. Dr. Harris described Larson's unique psychological profile, noting his complete dissociation from the moral implications of his actions. Unlike typical serial killers motivated by sexual or violent impulses, Larson viewed murder as merely a practical step in his process of identity acquisition. On March 3, 2022, facing overwhelming evidence, Larson changed his plea to guilty. In a chilling 3-hour confession, he detailed his methodology and confirmed 23 murders. His statement to the court revealed a disturbing worldview. "I gave these people immortality," Larson declared. "Their lives were stagnant, but through me, they continued to exist, to evolve, to experience new things. I became their future." The court heard impact statements from 28 families. Mary Davidson, sister of victim Thomas Davidson, spoke about receiving letters from Larson impersonating her brother for months after his murder. "He didn't just kill Thomas," she testified. "He stole his essence, mocked his memory, and tortured our family with false hope." Forensic evidence presented during the trial revealed the sophisticated nature of Larson's crimes. FBI analyst Robert Wilson demonstrated how Larson had developed unique methods for document forgery and identity assumption. The prosecution showed that Larson had spent years studying forensic techniques to avoid detection, making his capture particularly significant for law enforcement methodology. The trial also exposed significant gaps in identity theft prevention systems. Expert testimony revealed how Larson had exploited weaknesses in background check procedures and documentation verification processes. This led to immediate calls for reform in identity verification systems across multiple industries. On April 12, 2022, after 15 weeks of proceedings, Judge Patricia Anderson delivered the verdict. Larson was found guilty on all counts, including 23 charges of first-degree murder, multiple counts of identity theft, fraud, and document forgery. In her remarks, Judge Anderson described his crimes as representing a new category of evil, combining the calculating precision of a master forger with the moral void of a serial killer. The sentencing hearing on April 15, 2022, lasted 6 hours. Larson, speaking in his defense, showed no remorse. Instead, he delivered a disturbing monologue about identity and existence, claiming he had transcended ordinary human limitations through his crimes. Judge Anderson sentenced him to 23 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 385 years for related crimes. The Larson case led to significant reforms in missing persons investigations and identity verification procedures.